Okay, so welcome to our new class, Find the Facts, the Importance of Media Literacy. This video is meant to just kind of be an introduction and to introduce you to some of the concepts that we'll be covering in the course. So here we go. First of all, media literacy is basically the ability to be able to decode media messages, assess what those messages, influence those messages have on us, on the things we do, feelings we have, our thoughts, and also to be able to create media thoughtfully and conscientiously. In this course, we will more than likely focus most of our energies towards the top two pieces of media literacy, the top two concepts here about decoding media messages and assessing their influence. If time allows, we may delve into the creating media piece, but we believe that most of our focus will be on these top two concepts. So let's just talk first about decoding media messages. This is when we find media, and media can be defined as anything electronic or anything digital, print, that conveys a message to somebody. So it could be art, paintings, it could be photographs, it could be podcasts, songs, video, it could be news, but media isn't just about news, it's also about things that are there for entertainment, that kind of thing. So decoding media messages is when we look at those messages that are coming to us from wherever they're coming, whether it be the artwork or it be a news story or radio broadcast or whatever. We look at that message and we critically analyze what the message is trying to tell us. And we analyze how they're trying to tell us, why they might be trying to tell us that. We really kind of look at the message and try to determine what it's trying to tell us and why it's trying to tell us that. So why is it really important that we work with students on media literacy in terms of decoding media messages? And that's because media literacy can have, not being able to decode media messages can have kind of a negative impact, and not a lot of our students and adults alike are able to decode messages. So here's just some statistics about that. The first 82% of middle school students couldn't tell the difference between sponsored articles and real stories. This comes from a Stanford study that was done recently. There's a link, when we share this out, we'll also share a link to this slideshow, and the link to the study is right here, or an article about the study. Also from that study, most high school students don't even bother to verify where photos are coming from and just blindly accept the context in which somebody says that photo was taken. And then also, out of the Stanford college students that were in this study, more than 80% couldn't identify biased content from independent news sources supported by groups like lobbying firms as being less reliable than mainstream news sources. So they would look at, say, a website that was a medical website, a medical establishment's website, and they couldn't distinguish one from the actual medical association run by doctors and a doctors association from one that was run by a lobbying group. So it's really important that we're able to distinguish those things for ourselves. And so we really need to make sure that we are educating our students and our adults in how to be able to decode messages and know kind of where they're coming from and what the intentions are behind those messages. In terms of assessing the influence, media messages, whether they intend to or not, influence us. There are commercial ramifications as well as social, political, religious. There's lots of different implications from media messages. And so we need to make sure that students understand how to assess the influence those messages are playing in their lives. So again, why is it important? Well, Americans feel like it's important. This study here focuses mainly on made-up news or fake news, but Americans are saying that yes, it is a bigger problem than some of the other key issues that we have here. And so here's just some information that we pulled from the study. And again, we'll share this with you, and there's a link here. But more Americans see made-up news as a bigger problem than other key issues. I tend to agree with them, although this is kind of a passion of mine. And I believe that Megan shares that kind of belief with me. 68% of Americans said made-up news impacted their confidence in their government. That's huge. If people aren't confident in their government and they're not confident in their vote, then people tend to not participate. And we really need to have a country of people who participate in our system. So this is huge. Also, almost 2/3 of the country feel the current political divide is the greatest obstacle to addressing the issue of made-up news and information. And again, I would firmly agree that we have a political divide that is perpetuated by people pushing messages that aren't necessarily true, and that we need to make sure that people understand that. I always tell our students it's much easier to change our mind than it is to form an opinion. And so when we're looking at news and information, we need to carefully decide whether or not we're going to allow that message or that information to inform our opinions. Because as soon as we allow it to do that, then it's really difficult to change our minds. So we really need to take this part seriously. And then finally, in terms of the creating media, again, this piece I don't know that we'll get to spend very much time on, but we do want to make sure that it is an important thing to cover with kids, because students create media too. They make media for us in school, but also out in the real world on their own. We have lots of our students that make music videos and make YouTube videos and are artistic and artists. And I just did a lesson on this topic yesterday with a group of 11th graders, and they had questions about what's the difference between sampling music and just copying music. And they had questions about, well, I have a YouTube station, and what, am I breaking any copyright doing blah? So it's definitely something that they're interested in, because many of them are already creating their own media outside of school, and many will do that in their futures as well. So things that we should be covering with our kids are ideas about intellectual property and copyright and fair use. We should be covering with them the journalistic code of ethics, not only the elements of journalistic code of ethics, but also how to achieve those elements. One of the elements of the code of ethics is objectivity. Well, that's really difficult because we all have our own opinions and we all have our own bias. We're human beings. It's impossible not to. And we should be teaching our kids how to present information in a way that can try to mitigate that as best as possible. So again, this is another reason why it's really important to cover media literacy with our kids. There's a link here to this infographic that was put together about teaching copyright to students and some of the different things that they need to consider when just trying to decide, can I use that picture or not? And if I can't use the picture I want, what should I do? And so it's a good resource to maybe go back and look at. If you're creating media with kids, this should probably be woven into those lessons. So we're so glad that you're with us. This is something that we're really passionate about, and we hope that you guys learn a lot, and we hope that you all teach us a lot too. We're really anxious and interested in seeing how this can be woven into any kind of curriculum, of course, or any kind of student kinds of activities. So thank you so much, and we look forward to learning more from you. Have a good night.